Have you ever wondered what is in the great beyond? The thoughts of peeking beyond the cosmic veil. The idea of not being alone in the universe, that somebody or something is out there. That maybe if we scream loud enough into that void, our voice would be heard, even if just for a moment. A faint signal, the response from the great beyond. Most could never fathom such an interaction. Maybe it'd be a hostile response. Maybe something we aren't prepared for, or something else incomprehensible entirely. But what if for a moment, the great beyond gave us its response? That whatever was out there stopped by for a visit and our cries into that vast nothingness was heard? What if the veil was thrown open, our curiosity finally met with the answers we dreamt of and feared, and the only one to receive that response was ourself, by our lonesome?
Alone at the edge of a universe humming a tune with sparkling crystal souls aglow. You'll live forever tonight.
Voices of the Void, or commonly just called VOTV or Voices, is an indie horror game by Mr. Duck Nose with help from Monique Sanctifier. Its inspirations come from Vinesauce Joel's stream of a game called Signal Simulator, a huge reason my voices even exists.
There must have been an angel by my
Shut
side.
up!
Something held me, led me
Okay,
to
go in the
you.
fucking server room. Get the fucking.
All you're allowed to know before going in is the fact that it's a horror game about gathering signals from outer space. You play as Dr. Kell, a scrappy, fledgling young graduate with a PhD in astronomy. Most likely desperate for work, he signed himself up for being the solo satellite array operator for the Dunkel-Taylor Forest ASO facility. Launching up the game, you're greeted with something called an Omega warning. This warning says this game contains the following elements: bright, flashing lights and colors, violence, gore, phobia triggers, disturbing, questionable images, incognito hazards. While all those warnings seem pretty standard for a game of a mature rating, there's one that stands out very intentionally from the rest of them, that being the final warning of cognito hazards. For those who don't know, a cognito hazard can best be defined as information that, if perceived by any of our five senses, can be very dangerous. For this game, while nothing is substantially dangerous, obviously, it's not far off from how perceiving this game's content can be at times. Pushing past that warning and attempting to boot a new save isn't in the cards for a first-time player. Rather, you are justifiably forced to go through this game's tutorial first. The tutorial is not very difficult by any means, but what the tutorial walks you through is just the controls and how to interact with the world, straying away from actually showing you much of the game at large. And while the tutorial is pretty simple to follow, it can be a pretty big info dump for somebody first playing the game. But even still, we are only given the surface level retrospective of the main gameplay loop, mainly focusing on the gathering of signals, maintaining generators and servers, and how to interact with the world as a whole. The tutorial ending as soon as quit. You've completed the tutorial, and now we can continue from where we were before, walking down the dirt paths of the Dunkel-Taylor Forest, the main and only setting of this game, trying to get to base alpha from where we had spawned before, in the middle of the night no less, with only our flashlight and dim streetlights to help guide us to where we assume we have to be. If you do walk directly forward from the start, you'll end up at base alpha, which, from the outside, has a very brutalist design, its architecture focusing on function over form, made out of pure concrete with an alarming amount of trash littered around. It seems like people used to live here, or at the very least survive here. Walking into the base, all the lights are pretty obviously off, but you have to find the different light switches yourself, which are scattered around the base. Once the lights are on, you can take in the different rooms a lot better. The entire base is absolutely trashed, almost as if the trash was just thrown around with little care as to where it landed or resided, making you wonder just exactly how anybody could live like this. Exploring the base a little deeper, you can find the different useful rooms, with the main three rooms being the signal processing room where you do all your work, the garage where you can find your ATV, your main source of movement in this game, and the barracks where you'll be residing for the duration of your stay. While the base is a slight bit bigger than this, you get the memo that these 3 rooms are easily the most important. Your curiosity can lead you to poking around some more and figuring out other things about the base, but that's left to the player to figure out. Looking a bit closer, you can get clues of what once was, details that used to indicate this research base used to be a somewhat lively place of amenities, seemingly erected sometime in the 1970s, which places it near the end of the space race between the global superpowers. That could explain the optimism towards space in general, as is illustrated through the murals on the walls and the mere existence of the array in general. The combination of everything already mentioned evokes a deep sense of curiosity in anyone first arriving. The discovery of Voices of the Void is a huge part of what makes the game interesting for such a long time, and from the get-go, instilling this curiosity in the unsuspecting player is exactly what it seems like this game is going for oneself to make their own conclusions and figure out what once happened here. Better yet, make conclusions and attempt to figure out what is going to happen here, as the game has merely just begun, and you have a lot of cleanup to do, Dr. Cal.
What am I hearing, dude? Oh my god!
After the player gets used to their base of operations, does a little cleanup and explores a bit more, this is where the main gameplay loop settles in to get the player as accustomed to the Uncle Taylor forest without explicitly telling anything besides how to do your daily task, which is one of the 2 tasks that forces you outside your base. The main gameplay loop isn't just sit and stay. The game makes you go outside no matter if the player likes it or not, with the main 3 elements revolving around using the workstations to gather signals from space, driving to the various satellites around the map to gather hash codes from the native consoles of the satellites, and the final element that makes any of this possible in the first place, the generators. While you could potentially never do any tasks and be noted ASO's laziest employee, since there are no technical failsafe from failing to do your tasks, there is still the balance of sleep and needing to eat, with your survival being this game's true fail state. Besides it being your job, you do get paid accordingly due to how many signals you do daily, and the way the player is paid in this game is ASO's maybe or maybe not particularly legal point system, with the top left of your screen indicating how many points you have to spend. The points allow you to go onto your computer to access the store, which is how you acquire essential supplies like food and handy tools. You can also acquire upgrades for your workstations and even robots to make life easier, as well as not so essential supplies for making your dank old base feel more like home. While there are many great choices to spend your points on to allow the player to do many different unique things they couldn't do before, it'd be a disservice to skip past the robot section of the store, as besides whatever may be out there, this is one of the only ways to get companionship of sorts for the entirety of this game's existence. We did not see or hear from another human besides getting feedback of our daily quota through our email. Note that it is a one-way email, most likely intentionally. This isolation makes the robot section of the store all the more comforting to have. While there is a Roomba for cleaning up trash and making noises that occasionally scare the shit out of you, or the remote drone for scoping out landscapes within the safety of your own base, there is one robot that stands out, not only by its steep price of 500 points, but also in its function. The Kerfers are cylindrical-shaped cat robots that roll around on a single wheel. These robots are the most alive out of any of the others you can buy, and while not technically essential for your stay, are extremely useful, as when interacting with them you can tell them to go fix all the servers on the map. This even includes servers outside the base of various satellites. This alone makes them worth it, as it allows the player to have less to worry about on top of the already pre-existing daily tasks that they have to go through. Giving a bit of a breather to the daily cycle. Beyond the listed daily tasks, curious players can find that there is a lot more to do in the base alone besides simply just doing your job and getting by. One of the most common things for players to do when arriving at their base within the first week is to clean up and organize the messy state the base is in. By experimenting with the sponges left over in your base, you can clean up all the stains around your base. And by buying the garbage bags in the shop, you can pick up all the trash piles and even sell them off for a quick buck early on. This is just one of the many conclusions the player has to make in order to figure out things around here, with the previous example being a pretty easy thing to manage, with other mechanics like fishing and farming being less explained. Although to this game's credit, it is still an alpha, and even then, these mechanics can still be figured out on one's own. Leaving the base and exploring the Uncle Taylor forest, you can find a bunch of landmark locations of various items that could prove useful for different reasons, but usually leave more questions than finding answers. Like the seemingly infinitely deep hole that looks to go past what is humanly possible to dig down to. The Dunkel Taylor Forest is also home to where our satellites sit out in an organized fashion, with each satellite following the phonetic alphabet to make it easier to find where they all reside. The importance behind the naming scheme of the array is to be able to figure out which satellites you must visit for either routine maintenance or the daily task of acquiring the hash codes. Players who are time efficient usually take into account the locations in order to plan out what routes they will roughly take when a new day starts, but no matter what route they end up taking, there's always the opportunity to veer off course and explore. While the satellites are a huge part of what drives you outside in the first place, the last main element of the gameplay loop is the generators, which are placed in 3 of the 4 corners of the furthest out ring of the map roughly. These generators will provide the entire array of power, and if not occasionally reset, a number counting down from 100 will reach 0 and shut down everything, forcing you to go reset the generator in a map-wide blackout, no matter if it's daytime or night. This mechanic, while decently easy to maintain, is still something the player must look out for, as getting left in a complete blackout no matter the time of day can be encumbering. Besides the general laid out map of where the array is, another way of seeing the map is our courteously provided radar, which scans the array for any entities that may or may not exist. Dr. Kell, any technology like cameras or any other electronics, as well as the ATV and other living creatures are all shown on this radar. This piece of equipment gives the player both a sense of comfort knowing where things are, and also the constant lingering need to want to check this radar whenever they aren't busy with doing other things around the base. After building up a bit of a cycle and routine, the player can even start to feel the slightest bit of comfort. Most people even start questioning if this game even gets scary or when things might happen, and that's entirely the point. The game isn't going to give you a heads up when things happen, they simply just do happen. The game giving you as much freedom as it does with no clear objective besides the daily tasks is entirely by design. In fact, as the player gets better and acquires more upgrades to help their quality of life in their daily cycle, this free time grows. At a certain point, you may even start to feel bored and poke around at things, try different things that you normally wouldn't, or just get plain curious about the world around you. What happened here before? Why would Dr. Kell willingly choose to do this job? If this is a grace period of the game, how long will it last? And what if we aren't the only ones here in the Dunkel Taylor Forest?
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine?
So, for the sake of discussion, we aren't the only ones here in the array. The player can at least gather one thing early on, and it's that we have company here in the Dunkel Taylor Forest. The various anomalies around the array are called events, and while there are various categories of events, they all follow one essential format for the duration of your stay, no matter how little or big they may be. The format is more nuanced, but for the sake of discussion, it goes: condition is met, happen as it pleases, and event if another condition is met. Where this becomes a lot more detailed is what can actually happen and how the game chooses to thrust these events upon us, with some in the first week of the game being simple visual changes or non-threats of the player going along with their usual daily routine. Going into the second week, things start cranking up more and more as time goes on, with the birds from the ambience disappearing permanently, to shrimp packets that weren't stored securely being eaten, with just the trays left over. Going on to the third week, more straightforward and intrusive events start to creep in. Even so, there is still quite a bit of luck meeting the initial conditions to start an event. While sometimes it is entirely random, some events are very much player-initiated and come from simply just being curious and poking around, leading to some of the game's best moments.
What am I hearing, dude? Oh my god!
Maybe just by following a radar entity or taking a drive outside of your base's walls even. While the player technically doesn't have a surefire way of knowing when an event may happen, they do have a way of knowing if they are currently in an event, if not obvious enough already. The way of knowing is through none other than Dr. Kell. While attempting to sleep through an event, or already was sleeping before an event starts, will be unable to sleep. Attempting to do so, anyways, puts a prompt on screen of Dr. Kell's inner thoughts, stating, "I don't want to sleep, I can sense something." Or if asleep previously, will just wake up. This sixth sense has been unofficially dubbed meta-paranoia by the community, and not only does it strip Dr. Kell of the ability to sleep, but it also takes away the player's ability to pause. The pause text will appear to be glitched, and the game won't truly pause, with even saving being disabled in this state. The player being unable to quit and even hide from the events happening in-game is entirely intentional, stripping the player of your safety blanket in order to make the player face the event at hand, and to make the experience all the more seamless and sudden. Meta-paranoia will happen regardless of the event happening, from something big to the little things, which achieves in making not only Dr. Kell paranoid, but also the player. With the constant increase of events from week to week, near one of the generators, there's an event that very subtly happens far from the base. This event happens out of sight intentionally. It's a treehouse being constructed over the course of a few days. If there was any doubt as to if you were alone in the array, and this makes everything clear, you are far from alone. Time to play nice with the neighbors, Dr. Kell. They are here to stay. Cosmic gulfs it throws open before our frenzied eyes. This phrase comes from the book Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft, and is inscribed at the very top of our signal processing room. I believe this quote represents the veil of the Uncle Taylor forest being thrown open to Dr. Kell and the player to experience the vast unknown and what could possibly be out there. The depth of this game's many mechanics and how the scale as far as events go is nothing short of impressive without being overwhelming. Most of the main mechanics of the game, while simple to interact with from a surface level, can be expanded upon in quite a lot of ways, with the depth of this game's different mechanics being in two already discussed categories: the in-game shop and the events. The in-game shop is a very important part of guiding the player without outright telling them to do anything. The shop for many is what sees the player's curiosity and even guides them and sets goals. The reason for the shop being omitted from the tutorial is for the simple reason of you'd be able to jump shark without knowing the full idea of the game, and set goals that may not actually align with what would be objectively better for the player to focus on at the time. Most of your points in this game that aren't going to different upgrades for your workstations are typically going to the shop, and while you'd assume a lot of your budget ends up going to food and supplies for your work, you'll find that survival is actually pretty easy to maintain, as you are given an MRE and drive daily anyways. What the shop actually leads the player to is different objectives as either alternative ways to play or simply just tools or items that seem fun or useful. In the various tabs of the shop, the player can come to conclude that there's even alternative ways of obtaining points or essential food items. Fishing and farming both exist, and both are viable ways of playing the game alongside your main objectives. Just by the naming of different tabs and the existence of some items without explicitly telling you what they are for. While all this seems like a wild way to connect the dots that seem nigh impossible to figure out, it actually does come natural and is very rewarding to the player's curiosity if they can figure it out. The usage of common sense and just experimenting is what can lead to some of the more satisfying moments in the game when you feel like you've just unlocked more depth just by looking beyond the seemingly shallow veil. Another one of these crazy goose chase sort of quests related to the shop is the very internet famous Kerfur Omega questline, which does require a lot of work in making conclusions, but for this questline it's entirely started by those who just get curious about the bunkers sitting just outside the base. Walking around the back, there's a little slat in the concrete which allows the player to look in and see a keycard, most likely the keycard to the bunker. If using a hook you can find in the shop, you can hook a keycard through the little slat into your reach so you can open the bunker. Inside that bunker there is a binder that tells you everything you need to acquire and complete in order to make a Kerfur O, which is a highly upgraded version of our little Kerfur robot cat friends with much more capability and infinite power to boot. While the shop sets up a player with different goals, no matter the objectives, while either sitting around at base or exploring, the events and the scale of them will always keep you guessing what's going to happen next. As has already been described, the events can range from smaller, sillier things to full scale. Your base is thrown into disarray. You are flung back from your workstations. Items are thrown everywhere. You're immediately full of dread, especially hearing something falling out of the sky at such a fast speed. As the alarms blare out loudly, you wander outside to see what it was. This event is Voices of the Void's cycle of curiosity flipped on its head, where instead of you simply being the one finding the events found you. From this diagram, it seems you are not supposed to get anywhere near these wisp-like beings, or else suffer an unfortunate fate. These story events are scripted and will happen no matter what you do, but just because of that, it doesn't mean that the scale is any less dramatic. This is still relatively tame compared to what comes from then on, but after this point, the map changes become more apparent. The obelisk glittering in your front yard for the rest of your stay, and those wisps that the obelisk mentioned are now roaming about. Any encounter with them proving to be just as deadly and horrifying as the hologram warned us of. One could see the obelisk falling, and the wisp's arrival is just the start of a larger event yet to come, with some of your daily signals showing a large pyramid-like structure floating out in space, only to be greeted by none other than That same one-eyed pyramid a few days later, massive in size, stomping around and seemingly consuming the wisps that have been terrorizing you all week, not posing any threat to Dr. Kell. While this is the first of multiple large-scale events that transpire on the array, it sinks in that the cosmic horrors are much beyond what we can comprehend and imagine. From the obelisk landing to the big yellow wisps, and the skyscraper-sized pyramid simply just going about its business and then wandering off. The Dunkeltaler Forest is much more than what we could have ever imagined, and we are the only ones to observe it. After all, who's gonna believe you, Dr. Kell?
Alone at the edge of a universe, humming a tune, or merely dreaming.
Voices of the Void is a horror game that is beloved to me and quite a lot of people, as being both a source of comfort and dread all at the same time. You play as Dr. Kell, a scrappy, fledgling young canary. Let's be honest, ASO sent you out here for their own curiosity themselves. They wanted to learn more about the strange happenings of the Dunkeltaler Forest. You were the canary in the coal mine, and you survived your chaotic stay at the Dunkeltaler Forest. This game's intrigue and its mere existence leads the unsuspecting player on a truly unforgettable journey. You were most likely curious when you first stumbled upon this game, going completely blind into the unknown of the voices of the void, and hopefully stayed curious until the end. Sure, your curiosity lands you in some pretty genuinely unfathomable situations, but I'm pretty sure that's what the developers wanted when making this game. You became the canary, and you witnessed things that nobody else ever had. You reached out into the void, and you got a response, learning that in fact, we were definitely not alone by our lonesome.
Somnambulant directives to take the helm.